Welcome to Portland Industry Insider. Our topic for this episode is acting, and the perspective comes from the agency level. This fellow is a repeat offender, and this is not the first time that word has been used to describe him, Dennis Troutman from the option agency.
That is really accurate. That is absurdly accurate, yes.
Thank you for sitting with me again.
I'm happy to be here with you.
Yeah, and letting us use your wonderful
Yes,
gigs.
we're actually in the clubhouse today. We're at Option World headquarters today, so I've got a home field advantage.
Exactly. You only had to walk that far from your desk.
Yeah, exactly.
And we were chatting a little bit before this, and we were talking about gimmicks. We were talking, I said, Dennis, what do you think about this idea?
Gimmicks and superstitions.
Ideas and, whatever. And you're like, yeah, well, maybe, but it feels a little gimmicky. So there's the lead into my question.
Sure.
For actors who are looking for the competitive advantage, is there anything new that's happening that you've seen develop lately? Like, yeah, man, that's really helping. Or have you seen things that are gimmicks that are?
I don't think there's anything that can substitute preparation and professionalism. Really, I mean, sure, there might be an edge to be found somewhere, but I think somebody who is extremely capable and professional and who really does the work and really prepares, whether that's tape, whether it's material that you need to prepare and present in whatever context it needs to be presented in, I don't think there's any substitution for that. I don't. I don't really. I can't think of a gimmick or any new thing, any new technology.
Right.
If most people are taping their auditions right now, and I probably mentioned this to you before, but when it comes to tape and when it comes to preparing that material in your environment, I don't necessarily think that somebody needs to go out and spend hundreds of dollars on equipment. I think if you have that disposable income, great, then go for it. Give yourself that competitive edge.
Sure.
I think somebody who just takes what they have and uses it competitively, whether it's your floor lamp in your living room, whether it's a table lamp in a bedroom, play around with that stuff. Use what you have available to you. Be as competitive as possible with that. And prepare, and I think you'll be just as well off as somebody who maybe lacks preparation, lacks conviction, lacks professionalism, spends $500 on ring lights and equipment and tapes their audition that way.
Yeah, you said you used the word conviction, which is, I think, a tipping point for actors in terms of, because as you well know, you're an agent, you know that an audition can come in today and be due tomorrow.
Yeah.
And so having the technical part of it, there's plenty of time to experiment with technical stuff, right? So that's kind of coming to me now because, when I do headshots, as I've said to many a subject, I'm not going to reinvent the wheel with you. I have a half a dozen recipes that I'm going to use according to your look and facial structure and whatever. I'm not going to reinvent that because I want to be present for you to bring out what's important. So I think that if I'm hearing you right, that off-screen time is the time to mess with the lights and do whatever. It's not when Dennis sends me an audition.
That's exactly right. And to take that a little bit further, I think a mistake people a lot of times make who maybe aren't as well versed on the technology side of things or the physical applications of taping an audition, I think the mistake a lot of people make is they wait to conquer that when the audition comes. I've got an audition, it's due tomorrow or it's due 4 days from now. Now it's time to figure that stuff out. Work on it now. Don't wait for the opportunity to come. When the opportunity comes and you've already figured out the glitches and whatever your system is and whatever hurdles and obstacles that you have it figured out by the time that opportunity comes. Then you can just focus on the work, preparation, presentation.
Right.
I've seen a lot of people make that mistake of, I'm not very good at taped auditions, and then they don't really do anything, and then
to get better.
And then the taped audition comes, and it's due tomorrow afternoon, for example, and they're scrambling.
Right.
And I would rather actors not be spending that time scrambling, trying to figure out, how to do this. I'd rather them spend that time getting comfortable in material,
Right.
or preparing and presenting whatever it is they need to for that taped audition.
Right.
Figure out those problems ahead of time.
Yeah, make the mess. Take that side that you got from Dennis
Yeah.
6 months ago.
Yeah.
And make that. And will you take looks if
course.
somebody wanted to? I mean,
Absolutely.
Is that true? I know you would do that. Most agents,
I
would
think
assume.
so. I think most agents would, yeah. If the actors, had questions, had issues, needed some feedback, here are 3 different options, which one worked the best, I think any agent's going to be happy to do that. I don't think there's anything unique about the way I do it.
I would think you'd be ecstatic if somebody said, "Hey, you know what? I haven't, while in between now and the next audition, I'm trying this. What do you think?"
I'd be thrilled. I would be thrilled, and I would let them know that, yes, this is the way to do this. This is the time to do this.
Right.
Show me your 3 different lighting setups. I'll tell you which one works best for you.
Right. So the preparation, people think about preparation as well. And not to say that acting classes aren't important too, but there are a lot of different elements to what preparation means. Yeah. One of the things that I do as a photographer, because there's my business, and then there's the art, right? And the art isn't necessarily, it's something I'm going to do just for myself. The world's never going to see it. I'm going to get a friend to come in and we're going to collaborate, or we're going to do whatever. Yeah. And as I've said in other times, other interviews, my mantra is, let's go make a mess.
I love that.
Yeah.
Wow, that's great.
So
that's exactly, but that makes perfect sense, and that's the perfect term for it.
Yeah.
Go make a mess.
Because then it translates. Then I know what does or doesn't work. I've expanded outside of my comfort zone and there's no risk.
Yeah.
Because
exactly.
And I think so. So how would you coach? Because you've been in this business in every way for a long time. How would you coach your talent to make a mess, to make them better at when it can't be messy?
You kind of alluded to it just a moment ago. Go back and find a couple of old auditions. Better yet, find an audition where you feel like you just really fell flat on your face. Find an audition that you struggled with. Find an audition where you just didn't feel good about the work that you turned in. Go work on that. Work on ways to make that better. Find holes in your own game. Reach out to your support system, whether that's your acting coach, your agent, whoever. Find out where you might be coming up a little bit short. That's the job of your creative team, to help.
That's a great idea.
Yeah, but I would say, find an audition that you tank. Do that.
Revisit
really
the torture.
Really challenge yourself, or just go back and find your last couple.
Yeah.
See if you can make them better.
That's a super cool idea. In this day and age, we talked about, well, let me backtrack for a second. How important in Portland is being a social media thing?
I'm sure it's really, really important.
To the people who are doing it?
But I'm going to give such an unpopular answer because I'm just really not a social media person.
Okay.
So it's really hard for me to separate my own personal feelings and my own personal use of social media. It's important, absolutely. But I don't have to be in front of the camera. And luckily for me, I'm part of an agency that places a really strong importance on that and has a team to do that. So I don't really have to know too much about it. For the actor, I think there's a level of importance to it, absolutely. But I don't think it's ever going to replace what you present in front of a client.
So what does an actor need to do? And maybe I'm asking you a question that's outside your area, but
probably.
I'll ask it anyway.
Ask it anyway, but you'll probably have to cut it out.
Okay. For an actor, what is the thing that you're trying to get across via social media? Because social media for the sake of just doing it. And I'll use a personal example. I spent a period of time putting a lot of energy into social media. Got all kinds of followers. At the end of the day, it didn't improve my business. Lesson learned. So, speaking to actors, getting a whole bunch of followers doesn't get you booked.
Well, do you want to be an actor or do you want to be a personality?
Okay.
And those are really two different things. If you want to be a personality, an internet star, vlogger thing that they do,
Okay.
or yeah, I mean, there's a whole world there that I know nothing about, other
Sure.
than that it exists, and people find a lot of success and a lot of monetary value in that.
True, true.
If that's what you want to do, then I can't imagine there's anything more important than social media and marketing yourself via social media.
Right.
For an actor, I just don't know how much importance that plays. And that's one of those things where you ask 5 different people, you're probably going to get 5 different answers, and 4 of those people are probably going to tell you how important social media it is. And Dennis is probably
It's going to be the guy.
It's going to be the guy that's like, I don't know, I don't think so. No, I really don't. I mean, it really comes down to preparing and presenting yourself to clients or to casting directors or the room when you're actually doing the job with the team. And I just don't know how much social media really has to do with that.
You were a child actor, correct?
I was.
Right. What was the most fun thing about being a child actor? I mean, I know it was 120 years ago.
It was 120. This was back in the 1800s, when everything was black and white.
Everything was lit with candles.
That's exactly right.
Exactly. And the organ player provided this.
Honestly, I am a bit too old to really have a lot of memories of that. That was a product of my environment. I grew up in the entertainment industry with a mother who worked in the entertainment industry. And so just by default, I got in front of cameras, still cameras and moving cameras, and I did kids modeling and I did kids acting and things like that. Not a lot of memories of it. I didn't really become a competitive actor until I turned 18.
Okay.
And barely graduated high school by the skin of my teeth. And didn't really have a trade, didn't really have any plans, and decided, well, then I'm going to make acting my trade, and I'll train for that. I'll apply myself to that. That's when my career as an actor really started.
Right.
And I trained for years and years, and worked as an actor in my 20s and 30s until I retired. So.
Right. I feel like, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel like that for actors from 0 to 100, that it can be real strong until they get to be about 13 or so, and things tend to get a little bit
That's probably the same for me.
Quieter,
Yeah,
from 13
yeah.
to 18, and then 18 to play younger. Was that your experience? Did you feel?
Yeah, although when
were you booking high school roles as you got into your 18?
I did. By the time I got into my preteen years, I wasn't really doing anything as an actor and wasn't really pursuing that, and it wasn't being pursued on my behalf via a parent. I didn't really have any interest in doing any of that stuff, other than the occasional random job here or there that just happened to pop up.
Yeah.
It wasn't until I graduated high school that I found interest in it again.
Yeah.
And then at that point, I wasn't really doing a lot of 18 to play younger.
Oh.
I didn't really do a lot from, say, 18 to 22 period. My focus wasn't really on booking jobs. My focus was on training. I treated acting as an electrician or a plumber or any journeyman trade would. It was literally, I treated acting like it was a trade. And so from 18 to 21, 22, my focus was really just on training.
Gotcha.
It wasn't, I booked a couple of random things here and there, did a couple of movies, did a couple of shows, but it wasn't really the focus. It wasn't the focus until I got closer to my mid-20s.
Right.
And that's when I really started to pursue the other side of it.
Gotcha. So what is your advice? So let's take a scenario. There's the mom and the kid's been doing it since he's 5 or 6 or whatever the case may be, and he has some success and he still loves it, and he gets to be 12 and things start to dry up a little bit. What would be your guidance to a parent, and what is your guidance to the teenager? Because they're teenagers, they can clearly be communicated with too, right? The guidance to those two groups of people on how to maintain your enthusiasm, if it's something you really love. How do you progress when it appears you're not progressing in those leaner teenage years?
I think what makes an interesting actor is an interesting human being. And so if you're getting into those preteen teenage years where there's not a lot of opportunities, start looking at other things to just round yourself out as a person, as a human being, become more interesting. just by way of sports or extracurricular activities or reading or science or applied technology or whatever it is. You know, focus on growing as a human being and focus on becoming an interesting human being, because then if you do decide that you want to pursue acting and it does become a lifelong endeavor and it's something you re-engage, you know, once you get into those late teen years and maybe early 20s, you're a much more interesting person, a much more interesting human, and that's just going to translate to being an actor. Read books. Read books that don't have anything to do with acting. Read fiction, read nonfiction, read everything.
Right.
Yeah.
I think that the best possible scenario is that you've got to live a whole great life, of a whole broad range, rich life, and get to be an actor at the same time.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. And it really is. I mean, there's exceptions to everything. And I'm sure that there's really, really awesome, engaging, amazing actors that you and I watch that maybe in real life are kind of dullards, you know, or maybe just not the most like interesting people or the funnest people to be around, but they just happen to be extremely gifted and riveting and engaging as an actor. But I find more often than not, it's people that are just really interesting, great people. And those are the people that I'm interested in working with. I'm not, as an agent, I'm really not looking for the best actor, and I'm not looking for maybe the best looking person or the most marketable person. I'm looking for really, really awesome human beings. Really interesting, awesome, wonderful, kind-hearted, charismatic human beings. Those are the people that I want to work with.
Well, I can say from personal experience that most of the people I've photographed who've come from you are exactly that.
Good.
It rings,
that's good to hear.
It rings true.
That's good to hear, because that's really, really important. That's the most important thing to me, is just fostering that environment.
Yeah, making sure that people are putting good things out into the community.
Exactly. Being nice. And being fun and awesome and goofy and silly and charismatic and fun and being the kind of people that, you know, clients want to be on set with.
Right. What we were talking about there is talking in the previous episode that you know, there's a whole big picture of what goes on set, and that until you get there, you don't realize. Like I look at pictures, I look at Peter Lindbergh, right, and I open up the book, and there's a gorgeous picture of whomever, and people don't realize there's 1,500 people outside that frame. I mean, Peter Lindbergh was brilliant, of course, and he's the guy who ultimately had the vision and made it all happen and saw it through the camera. But he was not by himself, and anybody who acts like they are is, you know, deluding themselves. So it's as much a human relations. It seems to me, I'm not an actor personally, but it seems to me it's as much of a human relations business as it is a storytelling business.
Absolutely. So, and you need to be a professional, you need to be prepared, and you need to do the work, and there needs to be certainly an element of discipline.
Sure.
But yeah.
I personally am not, that is my weak spot, personally.
Really? That surprises me. I wouldn't think that about you.
Though that's,
You seem to be pretty disciplined. You're doing some really amazing work these days.
Oh, thank you. I set you up for that compliment.
We've talked about this before. You're evolving, and that's interesting. We talked about this a little bit earlier. The work that you're doing now is a little bit different. The work you were doing 2 years ago is a little bit different than the work you were doing 4 or 5 years ago. And I see discipline in that, and I see work, and I see and you deliver.
Well, thanks.
Yeah.
Thanks. I set you up beautifully for that.
You really did. Really well done.
See, there you go. Well, you know, I will tell you, this is a true story for me, and I guess it would apply. I mean, we're here to talk about actors, not talk about me per se.
No.
But I had an experience X amount of years ago with someone in the industry, and we were just having coffee, and we were talking about this, that, and the other thing, and out of nowhere, this person starts, for lack of a better word, kind of trashing on my work.
Really?
And I was like, a little surprised.
Yeah.
Under those I was like,
I would be.
That's interesting. And it was, you know, you really should look like this, was how the conversation went. And I was like, at that point in my career, and this was 4 or 5 years ago probably, I was like, okay. And I'd always that person, I had taken their advice. Yeah. And I was like, okay. So I went out and tried to do it and showed it to them. And they're like, nah, you can't do that. I'm like, huh. And I was like, this is really weird. So they didn't like it. And I didn't like it.
Yeah, exactly. It's serving nobody.
And I was like, okay.
Who's coming out
it was a
ahead?
big lesson for me.
Yeah.
So then a few months later, I went to LA and did a workshop, and it changed the way I took pictures. Just the photographer, I've known him and stayed in touch with him since then, and his work has gone off into this sort of hyper real thing that I wouldn't do personally. It doesn't appeal to me, but I know how he does it. And but I went down and he just said, do this and this and this, and stop worrying about all those things. Yeah. And if you do those three things, then you get to be you in the context of what you're doing. Yeah. And it changed the way I took pictures. Yeah. And I never went back.
It's the same. I mean, that was really bad advice. And it's the same thing for actors. Actors on an almost daily basis are getting really, really bad advice. Whether it's advice from other actors, whether it's too many voices in the room, too many cooks in the kitchen, maybe they got a bad note from an acting coach, maybe they got a bad note from their agent. Actors are surrounded by, at times, pretty bad advice. And you got to watch out for that.
Right.
Just as much as there's great advice all around you.
Right.
Yeah.
You got to just consider the source.
Consider the source and go to your creative team when you're unsure about something. If something resonates with you, if you get a piece of advice and it makes sense, and it's a light bulb moment and it clicks with you and it makes sense for you personally, that's probably really good advice.
Right.
If it's something that creates doubt or question or uncertainty in yourself or your skill set,
then pulls you down instead of putting lifting you up.
Exactly. Then maybe it's the time to check with your team. And that doesn't mean, put something out on the Facebook. And ask the village, everybody validate me and tell me what you think about this.
Oh yeah.
That's the last thing you want to do, and that's where most bad advice
especially
comes
on Facebook.
From.
No offense, Facebook.
Exactly.
I remember. I was going to say I remember putting pictures. I remember logging into a few photo groups and putting pictures up and having people critique and I'd get these critiques, and then I'd look at their pictures and I'd be like, you know what? Yeah. When Peter has passed, of course, and so has Herb Ritz. But if Peter Lindbergh has something to say about my pictures, that's one thing.
Yeah,
but
exactly.
A Facebook group. I don't want to try those. They serve a purpose for the people.
And there's value there, absolutely. But you're devalued in a lot of ways, and that's one of them. And pictures is a great example. I'm rarely on there, but when I do go on there and I see somebody, what does everybody think of this?
Yeah.
Well, that's. Does it matter what everyone thinks of that?
Right.
What are the people that matter?
What are the people who matter? Yeah. And my dad used to say, you don't compete with the person across the street. You compete with the person down the road. Yeah. Right. So if I want to compete with anybody, and I think this all applies to acting. If I'm going to compete, and that's a relative term, he's the guy I'm going to compete with.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
Jack Nicholson's the guy you're going to compete with, or Pacino, or any of the people. If you're going to compete, if you're going to look to somebody from an acting standpoint, not just from a personal standpoint, but from an acting standpoint, if you're going to compete with anybody or try to follow a road to anybody, there are plenty of geniuses and
really
legends.
Great examples, people that you admire, people that are doing work that you think is super interesting. Look at that.
Yeah. And your creative team can help you get down the road. I mean, that's what your job is.
Exactly, and that's your acting coach, your agent, close friends, not just perimeter friends.
People who've got your back.
But people who really, really care, have your best interest at heart. Yeah. Those are the people you want to talk to.
It's always a treat to see you, my
friend.
Yes.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
You seem so surprised.
I don't know. It's always really nice to sit down and talk to you too.
Yeah, I know that when I send an email, I'm going to get like I send an email, I'm like,
it's
been more than 5 minutes since I've heard.
That's a signature. I hear that quite a bit. If I email you, I'm going to hear from you in 3 minutes.
It's 5 minutes. I haven't heard from you.
I get that a lot.
Yes, but it speaks to your engagement with your business, and I appreciate that, and I'm sure the talent who work with you. I know a few people who work with you, and I'm sure they appreciate it.
I'm humbled by that. Thank you.
So it's really great to see you. Thank you very much.
Of course, brother.
All right.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Thanks for having me.